that Bindi's, just through, we always chat to students a bit about background. I knew that Bindi's research was to do with lung function and asthma, and I am asthmatic, and I studied for 15 years with a singing teacher from the Royal Academy of Music, who himself was quite severely asthmatic, and we had an interest in how singing can both benefit asthmatics and also the difficulties for asthmatics being singers and how to address them. So we got to a point where Bindi and I were talking about this in lessons occasionally, about the effect that singing has on asthma, and it just turned out that it seemed to have some parallels and crossovers with a particular project she was working on.
Were to take a deep breath from a particular bronchoconstricted state, you may actually not do very much good at all, because at that particular bronchoconstricted state, your airway is very stiff. If, on the other hand, if you were to breathe out, you move your airway to a less stiff state. You need a smaller force to generate a big stretch. So instead of taking a deep breath, you were to take a small breath out, get your airway to a more stretchy state, and then take a big breath, you might do a much better job of dilating your airway.
Music fundamentally isn't that scientific, as much as you will often find singing teachers talking about the science of the voice and all sorts. Ultimately, it's about people expressing themselves, hopefully feeling good about themselves when they sing, which can have a great psychological effect on how you breathe, your asthma, but it is slightly more difficult maybe to isolate cause and effect. So I sort of, looking at, I do have some mathematical background with my science training, so I did have Bindi explain to me what she was doing, and I recognise actually the background a little bit from how we study viscoelastic behaviour of polymers as much as anything, and I thought there is clearly something in this. I suppose the difficulty we had was what I was doing psychological? Did it just make you feel better, and when you feel better you relax, you breathe a bit easier? Or was it actually having this this material effect on the lungs?
I was presenting this very thing to a bunch of clinicians at Leicester. One of the guys in the audience, a guy called Hitesh Pandya, who works with kids who have asthma, said, "We should test this out. We've got we do a routine clinic with kids with asthma. Maybe we could test out what happens when you do different maneuvers and see how their lung function responds."
Almost without fail, there is a nervousness, there's a trepidation about people using their voices. We especially found this with teenagers in front of parents sat in the room, and that actually there's an almost palpable release of tension when they finally do an exercise which involves predominantly breathing out in long breaths, making some sort of noise. We weren't really trying to make people sing perfectly, we were just trying to get them to vocalise throughout a slightly exaggerated range with lots of breath, lots of relaxation, like big extended sighs.
The child comes in and does a lung function test, so they have to breathe out into a device which measures their flow and volume, and from that the clinician is able to tell how well they're doing in terms of their asthma, whether their airways are constricted or not. The singing teacher goes through a set of exercises with the patient. The idea is to try and get the airways to a point where they're not necessarily breathed out completely, but possibly just certain different levels.
Obviously we spoke to the clinicians themselves about how they would do a test, and they would come back and say, the repeatability aspects of and I suppose the objective aspects rather than subjective aspects that we need to bring out. And that does lead you far more down the academic route of how can we isolate from what we've done what is objective. That's said in a way, to be a proper study, it would need in a way me not to have to be in the room encouraging and drawing things out of people, but I think they said, could we turn Colin into an app that we could just have, that anybody could access this app to do these exercises without supervision. So certainly thoughts about that way, if this went on to a further study, would have have to be at the forefront of how to make it far more objective, far more repeatable.
Development of new drugs, effective new drugs, is incredibly expensive. There's a high attrition rate. Lots and lots of things are tested, but very, very few of them actually end up being used therapeutically. This, on the other hand, would be essentially free. If anything like this worked, anything mechanically driven in this way worked, it would be, we could do non-drug trials which are easy to set up, all of this sort of stuff. So it's very exciting. I don't want to get carried away, but yes.
A challenge is always there to be met, I think. So it was a good opportunity to maybe show that singing has benefits beyond somebody who wants to go up and stand on stage and do it as a performance. Anybody can sing washing up in the shower just to feel better about themselves, and possibly ultimately, I suppose, to make their breathing healthier.